southern Pakistan. In the middle of the Indus River Valley lie the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro. This ancient city, whose name means Mound of the Dead, was one of the largest urban settlements in the world in 2600 BC.
The ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro had what appeared to be streets that were laid out parallel and perpendicular to each other like a modern city. The homes actually had their own toilets, and they had a very sophisticated sewer system. So it looks like a very advanced city.
Ancient astronaut theorists have long thought this site was also the epicenter of a nuclear explosion that occurred more than 4,000 years ago.
Skeletons were found in dead positions as though there was an instantaneous death. And some of those skeletons, as measured by Soviet scientists, had 50 times the normal radioactivity. They found pottery that had been fused. Then walls were heated to such an extent they became vitrified or glass-like, suggesting some sort of ancient nuclear weapon involved.
According to the Mahabharata, the ancient holy text of the Hindus, white-hot smoke rose in infinite brilliance and reduced the city to ashes. Horses were burned by the thousands, and corpses were vaporized by intense heat.
And afterwards, a big silence came over the entire land, and people started to have boils on their skin. Their hair started to fall out, and their nails. There's only one thing that causes this, and that is radiation poisoning. It's radiation fallout.
So the question then becomes, when events happen in a place where there is extreme radiation, what impact does that have on human life or on other life present there? Could this explain, for example, why creatures were born with more than one arm or more than one leg, which then somehow became deified? Because even to this day, we know that in civilizations where anomalous human beings are born, somehow the touch of God is seen to be part of this creation.
According to the ancient Hindu texts, after the carnage at Mohenjo-Daro, a fearsome flying monster appeared in the sky. It was called Garuda.
In the Mahabharata, the Garuda is a massive bird-like creature. It's a red face, red wings, talon. It's so huge it would block out the sun. There are stories that it would let a certain god Vishnu ride on him on occasion.
And each and every time he would show up descending from the sky, he would create hurricane winds, and upon his descent, the earth would shake, dust would fly up in the air, and everyone in the vicinity would be absolutely terrified. Now, here we have a carving of Garuda, and if we look at the top, yes, they look like feathers, but at the same time, they could be interpreted as big, gigantic flames.
According to Hindu mythology, Garuda is born out of this cosmic event, this war and destruction that happens at the end of every age.
Could this have been somehow connected to exposures or to radiation, being born within a zone of high radiation? We cannot know the answer, but we do know that within India and within Pakistan there are known zones of higher radiation than there are normal. The logic dictates that somehow genetic abominations will have been born within those places.
Japan, March 11th, 2011, emanating 43 miles off the eastern coast of the Oshika Peninsula, one of the largest earthquakes in recorded history. A magnitude 9.0 shakes the earth. The massive movement of two tectonic plates instantly moves the entire Japanese mainland some 8 feet, ripping down buildings, setting fires, and killing thousands of people. But the worst is yet to come. The earthquake also triggers enormous tsunamis. Waves as high as 130 feet begin smashing ashore with devastating consequences.
One wave in particular struck the Fukushima Daiichi power generating plant and overwhelmed the safety systems, which caused the plant to enter a critical phase and release radioactive material into the atmosphere and into the water.
With the nuclear power plant's reactors melting down and radiation seeping into the atmosphere, the authorities evacuate the region. The only people who remain are employees who struggle for days to prevent a larger catastrophe from occurring. But according to eyewitnesses on the scene, these workers were not alone.
There were UFO sightings reported in some significant numbers in that area in the weeks and the days leading up to the earthquake and tsunami. And there were a number of UFO sightings reported in the immediate area directly afterward.
And this suggests the possibility that extraterrestrials were involved in stabilizing that situation. Because had that Fukushima plant melted down, it would have made a large swath of Asia uninhabitable for a very long time.
Could extraterrestrials really have been present at the Fukushima meltdown? And might they have helped to prevent it from being an even more catastrophic disaster?
A number of witnesses reported that there were UFOs hovering around the power station, and that even beams of light were coming down from these UFOs and doing something to the nuclear power plants and keeping them from having a much worse meltdown than they did have.
Was it simply good fortune that the nuclear accidents at Fukushima and Chernobyl weren't far more deadly? Or is it possible that the UFOs eyewitnesses spotted were responsible for averting these catastrophes when humans were powerless to do so? Ancient astronaut theorists believe these encounters weren't random occurrences, but part of an extraterrestrial agenda that has been in place on Earth for thousands of years.
It appears that there is an ongoing plan in place, a hidden hand in history that is manipulating events that we are interacting with an alien civilization, and that we are experiencing the fruits of what they are offering us because our history is being intelligently guided and directed to steer us towards a particular outcome.
Tokyo Imperial University, March 1924. In an early experiment with nuclear energy, Professor Hontaro Nagaoka directs 150,000 volts of electricity at a mercury isotope under a dielectric layer of paraffin oil for 4 hours. The purpose? To strike out a hydrogen proton from the nucleus of the mercury and produce a new element: gold. The experiment is a success. Professor Nagaoka has solved a mystery that has eluded scientists for centuries: the mystery of the Philosopher's Stone.
The Philosopher's Stone was an idea that you could have a magic kind of material that would turn lead or some very inexpensive metal into gold. The thought that one could do that is attractive in and of itself.
For thousands of years, kings sought out this mythical device, one that could create gold out of common metal. Scientists and alchemists spent centuries trying to invent one. Even Sir Isaac Newton obsessed over the mystery of the Philosopher's Stone in the 17th century. Although the English crown, fearing the potential devaluation of gold, had made the practice of alchemy punishable by death. By the time of Professor Nagaoka's experiment in 1924, most of the scientific community had declared the process of producing gold from another metal impossible. But that quickly changed once they knew where to look. The secret of alchemy lies in the stars.
When you think about how gold's made, naturally, gold is formed basically in the nuclear reactions in the sun. and then it's spread throughout the universe when a supernova occurs, and the sun explodes and sends all of the products out. Because we now can do controlled nuclear reactions, we have the ability finally to essentially manufacture gold from other elements.
Here, at the University of California, Irvine, Dr. A.J. Shaka conducts experiments in alchemy nearly every day.
We could put mercury into one of these tubes, and mercury has a minor isotope of 0.15%, mercury 196 it's called, and that isotope will actually pick up a neutron and in about 23 hours turn into gold.
To bring the reactor to full capacity, Dr. Shaka removes the control rods that absorb neutrons and keep them from reacting with other atoms. This generates power at a staggering rate.
In terms of the amount of power, including electrical energy that you can generate from a given mass of material, nuclear is about 10 to 20 million times better than anything else.
After 24 hours, the experiment has been a success and yields gold, a real-life philosopher's stone at work in the basement of a university building. The discovery of alchemy has been invaluable to science, but ironically, it has not produced untold riches.
If you irradiate for about a day in our reactor, you make 0.3 of a cent worth of gold. Since we charge $200 an hour to operate the reactor, you're pretty far in the hole.
But while modern-day alchemy is considered far too inefficient to create vast new caches of gold, ancient astronaut theorists believe a much greater technology than our own may have been at work thousands of years ago in ancient Egypt, another place where gold was linked to the gods.
The idea of gold being some sort of divine metal, divine element, is very much ingrained in the ancient Egyptian systems of belief.
Gold was the flesh of the gods, so therefore of very great significance. Egypt had probably the best supply of gold anywhere in the ancient world. And we find that in some of the letters which survive between the kings of Babylon, Assyria, and others, and Egypt, a lot of them are begging letters, basically saying to the Egyptian king, you know, "Oh, my brother the Pharaoh, please send me gold, lots of gold, because gold is as dust in the land of my brother the Pharaoh."
But just how did gold come to be so much more abundant in ancient Egypt than in neighboring lands? And why did the Egyptians view the metal as something not of this world? According to ancient astronaut theorists, it is entirely possible that the Egyptians were capable of actually manufacturing gold and may have received otherworldly help to do so. If alchemical transmutations can be performed in a modest facility like the one at the University of California, Irvine, what might be possible with a larger reactor? A reactor, perhaps, the size of the Great Pyramid at Giza.
Christopher Dunn has suggested that the Giza pyramid is some kind of giant machine, and that some kind of chemical reaction was taking place inside the pyramid. It's possible that the Giza pyramid was actually being used to transmute other elements into gold.
Looking into the blueprints of the internal arrangement of passageways, chambers, and shafts, the appearance of it to me did not resemble anything that would be used as a tomb. The precision with which it was built, the precision of the stones that go into building the Queen's Chamber, the Grand Gallery, and then also thousands and thousands of tons of granite that were brought down the Nile 500 miles to build the King's Chamber. These are the features that really shout out and say, there's something going on here, there's something different. It was built like a machine, perhaps it functioned like a machine.
Sindh Province, Pakistan. 1922, an officer of the Archaeological Survey of India is led by a Buddhist monk to an area believed to have been a religious monument. But under the mounds of dirt, archaeologists find instead an ancient Indus Valley city dating back to 2000 BC. It is called Mohenjo-Daro, or Mound of the Dead, and it is one of the oldest civilizations discovered in the world. The city of Mohenjo-Daro rivaled the ancient civilizations in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Archaeologists believe that over 35,000 people once occupied the city. However, only 43 skeletons have been discovered at the site. There are many theories surrounding the mysterious disappearance of the Indus people from Mohenjo-Daro. In 1977, British researcher David Davenport discovered that part of the archaeological site showed evidence of having been destroyed by an extremely powerful explosion.
He found what remains of the blast, and he believed that this area was the epicenter of something that he believed was an explosion that destroyed a part of the city. And he found the evidence of vitrified pottery, bricks that were totally fused, melted, or vitrified.
In 2014, mineralogist Dr. Sam Iyengar was able to obtain a piece of fused pottery from Mohenjo-Daro and put it through a series of tests.
When I did the elemental analysis, it showed me that the Mohenjo-Daro rock contained mostly silicon, aluminum with some calcium and potassium. So my thought was maybe it could be some type of a clay, till I did the X-ray diffraction.
X-ray diffraction is able to determine exactly how a material was formed.
This is the pattern I got, and you can see some crystalline peaks here along with an amorphous hump, which usually results from a glassy phase in the rock. The composition is very similar to volcanic rock. The only way the clay can be converted into something which we saw is subjecting the clay to a very, very high temperature. I'm talking 4,000 to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That is not something an early civilization can do intentionally. It has to be something supernatural.
Could this pottery sample, which shows irrefutable evidence of having been subjected to extreme heat, be definitive evidence that Mohenjo-Daro really was the site of some type of powerful explosion in the ancient past? David Davenport and other researchers of India's ancient Vedic texts have suggested that this is the case, and that Mohenjo-Daro may in fact be the kingdom of Lanka, a city whose destruction is detailed in the Indian epic known as the Ramayana. In the Ramayana, it is described that the god Vishnu decides the leader of Lanka, a mortal named Ravana, has grown too powerful. Vishnu takes the human form of Rama and does battle with Ravana, who has become like the gods himself.
It was described as the sun turning into 50 even more brighter suns with this incredible blast. So some people have suggested that perhaps at Mohenjo-Daro some type of a nuclear blast occurred. Not only do we have a textual reference to a possible nuclear blast, but we also find physical evidence that show vitrification of stone. And the only way that stone can be vitrified is if it's exposed to extreme heat.
I happen to believe that mankind possessed incredible technology, incredible knowledge, and that they did things that we're doing right now, and then something happened, and they had to literally start all over again. Whoever got involved said, that's not going to happen. Let's let them have knowledge, but not too much knowledge. And I think that's probably what's happening here.
These extraterrestrials wouldn't want us to have access to these advanced technologies and essentially become like gods. but they may have a keen interest in A, following some sort of prime directive so they don't openly interfere with us so that everybody knows they exist, but B, also making sure that we don't destroy the planet.